The old Martim sat on the creaking wooden porch, watching the sun slowly sink behind the hills. His calloused fingers held a cup of lukewarm coffee, forgotten between one thought and another. How long had it been since he last stopped like this, simply to breathe? To feel the weight of his own body in the chair, the smell of wet earth after the rain, the distant song of a bird searching for shelter. 63 years of life. 63 years of storms. He closed his eyes and let memory carry him back. He became that 12-year-old boy again, thin as a twig, watching his father leave for the last time. There was no dramatic farewell, no tight embrace. Just a weary man picking up an old suitcase and disappearing down the dirt road. Young Martim stood still in the doorway, feeling the cold wind strike his face, carrying questions that would never be answered. Why did he leave, Mom? His mother, with swollen eyes but a steady voice, knelt in front of him. She held his small face between her rough, work-worn hands and said something he would never forget. Son, there are people who are like the wind. They pass through every place, make noise, stir everything up, but never stay. And there are people who are like the mountain. They stay. Even when the wind tries to knock it down, even when the rain insists on wearing away its stones, the mountain remains standing. Martim did not understand that day. How could he? He was just a boy hungry for a father, with a hole in his chest the size of the world. But he kept those words as one keeps a seed, not knowing that one day it would sprout. The years that followed were full of strong winds. Life showed no mercy to the boy who became a teenager. He had to work in the fields before the sun rose, carry sacks of corn heavier than his own body, and study by candlelight because there was no money to pay the electricity bill. There were nights when he went to sleep hungry. There were mornings when he woke up without the will to get out of bed. I can't take it anymore, he said to his mother on one of those mornings, tears of anger streaming down his face. I want to leave too. I want to run away from this life. His mother, aged before her time, placed her hand on his shoulder with surprising strength. You can run away, Martim. No one will stop you. But know this, running away is easy. What's hard is staying. It's remaining standing when everything pushes you down. It's being the mountain. He stayed. Not because he was strong. Not because he was brave. But because, deep down, something in those words made sense. Something he still couldn't name, but that pulsed inside him like a stubborn heart that refuses to stop. At 22, he met Helena. She had eyes that shone when she laughed and a courage that both frightened and fascinated him at the same time. Helena also knew the wind. She had lost her sister in an accident, had watched her family fall apart, and had more than enough reasons to give up. But she was there, standing, planting flowers in the yard as if planting hope. Why do you keep trying? He asked her one hot afternoon, watching her water the seedlings with care. Helena smiled in her own way, half sad, half strong. Because giving up would mean letting the wind win. And I wasn't born to be carried away, Martim. I was born to stay. They married the following summer. The ceremony was simple, in the small village church, with few guests and a great deal of emotion. When he placed the ring on her finger, he felt something change inside himself. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about building. It was about being the mountain for someone. The children came. First Laura, tiny and loud, then João, serious since he was a baby. Martim worked even harder. 2, 3, sometimes 4 shifts. Bricklayer, helper, street vendor, whatever came up. His hands grew more calloused, his back began to ache, his hair turned gray early. But he was building something greater than himself. There were nights when despair knocked at the door. Bills that wouldn't balance, illnesses that demanded expensive medicine, the feeling of always chasing after it, always one step behind what was enough. The wind blew hard, whispering in his ear, give up. It's not worth it. You won't make it. On one of those nights, with his head in his hands and his heart tight with anguish, He felt Helena's hand on his shoulders. "You're tired," she said, not as a question, but as recognition. "I am," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Sometimes I feel like I can't bear being strong anymore." Helena sat beside him and held his hand. "The mountain gets tired too, my love. It also feels the weight of the snow, the force of the rain, the persistence of the wind. But do you know what makes it special? It doesn't need to be strong all the time. It just needs to keep being there. One day at a time. One stone at a time." Those words were a balm. He realized he had confused endurance with invincibility. The mountain is not strong because it doesn't feel pain. It is strong because it feels everything and keeps going. The years passed like pages of a book. Laura graduated as a teacher, João became a mechanic. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with laughter and chaos. Martin's mother passed away at 87, sleeping peacefully in her bed, after a lifetime of being the strongest mountain he had ever known. At the funeral, holding Helena's hand, Martin finally understood everything. He understood why his mother stayed. He understood why he stayed. He understood that being the mountain was not about never falling, but about choosing to get back up. It was about growing roots so deep that no wind, no matter how strong, could tear them out. There were bad moments, of course. The wind never stops completely. There was the financial crisis that nearly took the house. There was the scare with Helena's health, those months of tests and uncertainty that stole Martin's sleep. There were arguments with the children, misunderstandings, harsh words that later hurt him more than they hurt them. But there were also sunny mornings. Afternoon coffees with Helena on the porch. Noisy birthday parties. Tight hugs from the grandchildren. Small victories that, added together, formed an entire life. Now, sitting on that porch, at 63 years old and with a body that no longer responded as it once did, Martin looked back and saw a trail. A trail made of choices. Of continuing when it was easier to give up. Of forgiving when it was easier to hold on to resentment. Of loving when it was easier to close himself off. Had he been the wind sometimes? Yes. He had failed, shouted, made mistakes. He had hurt those he loved. He had lost himself along the way. But he always returned. He always stayed. He always chose to be the mountain. Helena appeared in the doorway, bringing a blanket. "It's getting cold," she said, placing the blanket over his shoulders. Martin pulled her to sit beside him. They stayed there in silence, watching the first stars appear in the sky. He thought about all the storms they had faced together. About all the times the wind had tried to separate them and they had held on tighter. "Do you remember what my mother told me when I was a child?" he asked suddenly. "About being the mountain?" "Yes. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought it was about being hard, unshakable. But now I know what she meant." Helena looked at him, waiting. "She meant that we choose who we are," Martin continued, his voice filled with emotion. "Every day, we choose. We can be carried away by the wind of circumstances, of difficulties, of disappointments. Or we can plant our feet on the ground and say, I will stay. Not because it's easy, but because it's what matters." A tear ran down Helena's face. "I could have by my side," she whispered. They embraced there, two survivors of countless storms, two mountains who chose to stand side by side. And as the night wind blew softly, carrying the scent of distant rain, they realized something profound: the mountain does not answer the wind with words or with violence. It answers with its simple, stubborn existence. Standing when everything tells you to fall. That is being the mountain. Being present when it is easier to disappear. That is being the mountain. Continuing to love when the heart is tired. That is being the mountain. Martin closed his eyes and felt a peace he had not felt in a long time. He had been the mountain. Not perfect, not imposing, perhaps not even that great. But steady. Present. Standing. And that, he realized, was more than enough. The wind would keep blowing. It always does. But he, like the mountain he chose to be, would remain standing. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Until the last sunset. To everyone who made it this far, my sincere thanks. Thank you for dedicating your time to this story. For opening your hearts to get to know Martim, Helena, and their mountains. For allowing these words to find a place within you. Everyone who reads these lines is also a mountain in their own way. Each person faces their own winds, their own storms. And the simple fact that you are here, reading, reflecting, resisting life's challenges, is already something to admire. May we all find the strength to remain standing, one day at a time. May we be mountains for ourselves and for those we love. Gratitude for being part of this journey.